Lesson 121. Flexible word order in action. In the last lesson, we studied word order, and we learned that it can be flexible. And really, the reason it can be flexible is because of the inflected noun endings. Because the endings of the various nouns tell us what those nouns are doing in the sentence, we can switch the order of the words around while still maintaining the same meaning.
Yes, that's right. You could put them in any order and it'll still make sense.
So, Sergey, why might you want to change the word order in a Russian sentence? What can that do for you as a speaker, someone who's trying to communicate something to someone?
I think it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you're trying to communicate. So you could, by changing the word order, you could emphasize part of the sentence in a way that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So, for instance, the first example is "Я даю газету Кларе." It's kind of emphasizing who you're giving it to versus that you are giving it. So, in other words, because you don't find out who you're giving the newspaper to until the very last word, it's kind of keeping you in suspense. So it could be you giving it to somebody else. But in the second example, you say "Я даю Кларе газету." So you establish that you're giving something to Clara, but it's not clear until the very last word what you're giving. So it could be something else that you're giving to Clara. So it kind of emphasizes different parts of what you're trying to say.
So you can rearrange the word order in a Russian sentence to emphasize something or to draw special attention to something.
Yeah, that's right.
By moving that word more toward the front of the sentence.
Yeah, I think there's probably different ways of doing it, but in these two particular examples, I would say in the first example, you're emphasizing who you're giving it to, which is in this case Clara. And in the second example, you're emphasizing what you're giving to Clara, which in this case is a newspaper.
So you're saying that the thing you want to emphasize really is being moved to the end of the sentence.
In this case, yeah.
You know, my background is in Latin, and in Latin, what they tell us often is that things you want to emphasize get moved to the front of the sentence. But here, as Sergey just mentioned, the things that are being emphasized can actually be put at the end of the sentence.
It's kind of subtle, and it doesn't have to be. Another way that we emphasize things in a sentence is with how you inflect. Just as there is stress within a single word, so you have a certain syllable that's stressed, within a sentence, you could have a whole word that's a little bit more emphasized than the other ones. So, for instance, in the first sentence, you could emphasize different parts of what you're trying to say just by how you inflect that word. So you could, if you want to emphasize that you're giving the newspaper to Clara, you would say maybe "Я даю газету Кларе." You would kind of emphasize the word Кларе. If you want to emphasize that you're giving her the newspaper, you might say "Я даю газету Кларе." So you'd put a little more emphasis on the газету and maybe have a little more space.
And of course, you can do those things in spoken language, not so much in written language.
Exactly. So when it's written down, what I said earlier might be more applicable, that putting the word at the end of the sentence might emphasize that word more.
And I think one of the most important things for English speakers to remember is to remember that the word order can be flexible, because our brains are programmed with such fixed word order that there can frequently be mistakes made when you assume that the first word is a subject, and that it's going to follow an English word order. So just making sure you're always paying attention to the endings and letting those dictate the jobs that each word is doing, so that you can make sure you don't, for example, accidentally switch the subject and the direct object, which is a common mistake.
Right. You can't just come at the sentence assuming that it will have the same word order as a corresponding English sentence.
Right.